Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
And we're into the final stretches of the BJ Show. Segment C, as we call it. That is John, I am Brad. Together we make, I don't know what we make. It is a Friday, and TGIF, I always feel good about Fridays ever since I was a kid, because you're thinking, oh, I get done at school today, and I got 2 days off.
That's right.
And cartoons.
And especially with this warmer weather, Brad.
Right, and cartoons on Saturday morning. Okay. Let's continue our discussion. Once again, we try to stay local, but there's so much national stuff. So it comes out we're talking about the situation with Biden and the documents. Mm-hmm. It comes out in the report that the guy, his name's H-U-R, I believe, he essentially makes a comment that when they interviewed President Biden, he couldn't tell them what years he was vice president. He had no idea of what year he was vice president and what year he wasn't. And essentially in the report, it states that the reason they're not going to charge him, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, John, I read this a couple times, the reason they're not going to charge him is because if they put him in front of a jury, the jury would feel sorry for him because he is cognitively, I can't say that. What's the word?
Yeah, cognitively. He showed cognitive decline.
Right.
And that in front of a jury, the jury would find him to be a sympathetic character.
Am I making that up or what?
No, it's true, yeah.
And I'm going like, what in the world is this? This guy's
And that's why when I was giving you a hard time earlier, I think most folks know, and you know, but the phrase they used was a well-meaning elderly man.
Right.
With a poor memory. They added with a poor memory.
Okay, once again, I'm not defending Trump because I think what Trump did was sort of stupid with the documents, the whole bit, and to the point where it's like, why do you want that stuff? Yeah. I mean, like.
Well, and in Trump's case, not to interrupt, but in Trump's case, it could also be more than a bit of petulance.
Well, but why would you want all those documents? I don't understand that. I mean, and the crazy thing about this is, which I find fascinating. Let's go back 30 years, and for you, John, that would put you back like in high school or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back 30 years when the computers really start to take charge, and Steve Gates or Bill Gates is cranking out IBM PCs, and Jobs and the boys are cranking out all these wonderful Macintoshes and Apple IICs and things like that, and both of them are saying, there will come a time, there will come a day when we won't have any more paper documents.
Yeah,
paper documents.
Paperless society.
Right, a paperless society. We have more paper than ever because you hit a button on your computer and your printer spits out 25 pages in less than a minute, whereas in the old days, it would take you...
you had to wait.
Right. Well, in the old days, it would take you hours to type that stuff. You go back.
Of course.
You go back and you watch some of these movies in World War II, where they're literally typists. There's typist pools. There's literally pools of, and mainly women. Let's be honest, mainly women sitting in rooms typing documents because that's all they did. Because nowadays we don't have that. Nowadays we have scanners, we have OCR and stuff like that. So here's my point. Trump. They're saying, well, he didn't work with us. That's why we had to have the FBI come in and raid him. But Biden's excuse is, hey, man, once I found these things, I said, come on in. Take a look at everything. So he's saying he's not guilty because of the fact that he admitted to the fact that, oh, man, I screwed up. I can't some of these documents. Okay, can I make Brad's stupid analogy?
Yeah.
Okay, Brad steals a car. John steals a car. Mm-hmm. Brad takes the car and hides it away in a storage unit somewhere, and light of day that car never sees for like 2 years. John steals the car, and after a couple weeks decides, you know what, this wasn't quite right, and he shows up to the police department one day and says, hey, I stole this car, I don't feel right about this. It's in my garage, you can go get it, and please don't charge me because I showed up late.
Right.
Get what I'm saying?
I'm self-reporting.
I mean, the idea being is,
yeah.
Are you less guilty than me because you admitted the fact that you stole the car, or am I
Absolutely not?
Why?
And some would argue that I'm actually being selfish because it feels really good for me to admit it and to relieve my burden. but I committed the same crime you did.
Right. And if we take this to the extreme, anybody who says, you're in front of the judge and the judge says, why did you punch this guy in the mouth? Well, I punched him in the mouth, and the next day I felt bad, and I went to the police department, and I said, yeah, I punched that guy in the mouth. Well, that's the case where no charges, no battery charges at all. No, that's not what's going to happen. You're still going to end up.
Everybody listening who's ever raised a child, and Brad, you've raised 4, it knows that when you have that conversation, everybody's heard from their kid, but I said I'm sorry.
Right.
And then you have to have that painful conversation where you acknowledge, and that was the right thing to do, fill in the blank child. But that doesn't change the fact that you socked him in his jaw,
Or the other one was, I didn't mean it. That's the other one.
Yeah, I didn't mean it.
I didn't really mean it. See, and then he has the press conference last night, and I'm telling you, I'm listening before we go on the air this morning. I'm listening to Fox. I'm listening to CNN. Everybody is talking about this press conference last night, where he just, I'm telling you, it's John, let's be honest, it's kind of spooky, don't you think?
I do. And you know what? And, literally dozens of other people have pointed this out, but you juxtapose that interview or that press conference next to Tucker Carlson with Putin, and you see what one leader of a civilized nation says, and you see what the other one says and how they comport themselves, and it's night and day.
Right. But see, the interesting part of it is, and once again, I'm a guy who's publicly said, I will say it again right now because I don't want anybody to say, well, you're just a Trumper. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, the race should be between Nikki Haley and this Dean Phillips guy. If you don't know who Dean Phillips is, I'm very impressed by him. He's a Democrat, has an interesting past. Matter of fact, a lot of sad things in his life. His father was killed in the Vietnam War when he was 6 months old. Sharp as a tack. He's a Democrat from, I believe, Minnesota. Isn't that where he's from, Minnesota?
Yeah, yes.
And once again, Nikki Haley, Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, even some of these other guys. I mean, the interesting thing was that there's a clip that's going around that apparently Trump is calling various people. And one of the people he calls is Joe Rogan. And he says, Joe, who should I consider for my vice president? And Joe told him, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And Trump says back to him, this is Joe Rogan saying this, Trump says back to him, you know what? Everybody I ask says the same thing. So once again, I say, let's have some fresh blood. Mm-hmm. Let's get Dean Phillips or somebody else. What bothers me now is on both sides of the equation, it's this hocus pocus, we've got everything all figured out. How is it that Nikki Haley, how is it that Nevada has a primary and a caucus, and Nikki Haley loses by 40 points to none of the above, which is, when you think about that, you go like, that's sort of sad if you lose to nobody, and yet Trump walks away with the delegates from Nevada. I'm going like, okay, this is like sort of spooky stuff. And once again, there was a point, was it last week, the week before, where the Republicans were saying, you know what, we don't even think we need to have any primaries anymore. And the Democrats are having these fake primaries where, Joe Biden wins in South Carolina.
They're symbolic. Yeah,
right.
They're not real.
But yet there's only 4% of the people that vote. And it's going like, okay, how is that, an indicator of, oh, man, and the Democrats, oh, my God, he won resoundingly in South Carolina. Well, because most of the people didn't show up to vote. That's why once again, if what's sad about it is you see some of these school board elections, some of the mayoral elections where somebody wins and they won because 5% of the people showed up to vote.
An abysmal amount. And, well, frankly, let's look at school board elections, too. And then when there's a controversial issue, people say, how in the heck did these fruitcakes get on the school board? Well, 11% of people showed up to vote,
Right. And the interesting thing about this is, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's an interesting topic in itself. One of the interesting things, and I had this discussion with someone yesterday who I have a lot of heated discussion, well, not heated, but we have some spirited discussions because this particular person is very left-leaning, and I am not. I'm not in that camp. I'm not. I've said it before, I'm a libertarian, and I really do believe that. People go, and it's funny because people always think that you're an anarchist. You know, an anarchist is an anarchist. Anarchist says no rules. It's sort of like, what's that movie, The Purge? You know, where anarchists to a certain extent say purge 365. In other words, anything you want to do, any day of the week, any day of the year, right? Free for all. You want to go out and you know, shoot people? Hey, that's fine. You want to go out and rob a bank? No big deal. Okay. The discussion I had yesterday was the situation with school boards. And for a long time, it was a known fact, and John, you're the political expert, you know, reel me in if I'm wrong. For a long time, it was a known fact that the National Education Association, in other words, the teachers union, would essentially promote certain people to school boards who essentially were either NEA, you know, employees, NEA members would essentially toe the NEA line. So in other words,
they have their own. What you're saying is they have their own slate, and that continues today.
Right, and essentially what happens is the unions end up running the school districts because
That's exactly right.
Because of the fact that not only do they control the teachers, but they also control the board as well too. And within like the last, 3, 4, 5 years, you've seen this happen in a lot of districts. It happened in Francis Howell, where a lot of the people said, what is this? Who are these union people? Who are these people that are getting on a school board? And if the NEA said jump, the board members ask how high on the way up, and there's a backlash on that. People saying now, but once again, the flip side of that is some of these people that get in their school board, against the NEA, led members are wackadoodles themselves.
And you could say they go a little too far.
Well, like, are you in Rockwood where you live, or were you in Parkway, or where?
Parkway, yeah.
Okay. The gal who used to be on Tracy's station, who got elected to the Rockwood board, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Jess. I can't think of her last name.
Right. And
Jessica Clark was her name, right?
Well, but she's got a couple different names. That's the interesting thing.
That's for sure.
Right. And she was one of the original people on Tracy's station. Fruitcake. I'm saying, I'm just saying that, okay? Looney Tunes, okay? I mean, way out there, okay? And she actually ran a website promoting the fact that you would hire her and she would teach you as a woman how to marry a rich guy. Okay.
Yeah, it was how to engage in the sugar lifestyle, I think, was the way that she
I'm going
put it. Yeah.
I'm going like, hold on a minute now. This woman's going to be on the school board? Someone who's teaching women how to marry rich dudes? So I'm going like, I don't know if I like this or not.
Well, that's upward mobility, right, Brad? I don't mean to undermine your original point, but I mean that's female entrepreneurship, right?
But to me, the educational system should promote, I'll get in trouble when I say this, should promote family values,
Yeah, and also, if anything, first of all, my only quibble with that sentence, Brad, is that let's start with reading, writing, and arithmetic, and classroom basics, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not quibbling with what you're saying. I'm saying, but you wouldn't even need to, and this is, Scott Fawn from This Week in Missouri Politics brings this up all the time. We wouldn't have so many arguments about CRT and white shaming and all these victimhood narratives and letting boys use girls' bathrooms and whether that's gender identity or not. If we focused on getting our test scores up, we wouldn't have spent so much time talking about DEI.
Well, once again, one of the stories this morning that's probably that you don't do a lot of the local news on your johncombest.com site, but one of the stories is there's more garbage going on with the Wentz or with the
Andrew Bailey's involved in that because of the behind closed doors conversations about letting boys use girls' locker rooms and bathrooms.
Right, the Wentzville district and then the Francis Howell district. There's more stuff going on about what the criteria is going to be, the curriculum is going to be for the Black Studies courses. I'm going, okay, what?
Yep.
And the crazy thing about this is, okay, let's say I'm a guy who runs an auto repair shop, okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to hire mechanics, or as they're called, technicians nowadays. And I have 5 guys apply, and 4 of them said they went to Rankin Tech, and they have their diploma in auto repair. And the 5th guy says he went to Mizzou and he studied Egyptian studies, and he's an expert in ancient Egypt. Okay, guess which guy's not getting hired? I mean, it's to the point where it's like. Once again, I know we were talking apples and oranges, where essentially I'm saying let's teach practical stuff. I've talked about this before, that when I went to school, we had woodworking class, we had metalworking class. That's all gone in most high schools.
Yeah. I can't imagine you walking into your alma mater or mine and seeing kids using a wood lathe or using a drill press.
It just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And to the point where I talk to clients on a daily basis. I talk to clients, trying to get them to advertise. If I talk to HVAC guys that own the companies, you know what every last one of them will say? I can't find enough qualified people.
Yeah.
I can't.
I had, along the same lines, I had a locksmith out here not long ago, and he said that, he wanted to retire years ago, but he can't find young guys that want to be locksmiths because nobody wants to work. First of all, nobody wants to work. But secondly, why would you want to go learn a trade, something that you could use in every part of the world fixing locks?
Well, I quite honestly, I find that fascinating. I'm sort of a nerd when it comes to locksmithing. Believe it or not, I've got my rekeying kits and stuff like that. I can rekey locks. I shouldn't admit this, but there's a whole thing called Lock Sport. Have you ever heard this before?
No, I haven't heard of this. Is this on ESPN 2?
No, it's ESPN 46. I think this was on. But this is where you essentially, they give guys locks. And they say, and they time them with how quick they can pick the locks.
It sounds like a Sean Connery movie.
Or if they can pick them. Well, what's funny, once you know how to pick a lock, you see these things on TV, you go, that's not how you do it. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work like that.
That's not how it works. There's no way they're picking that lock like that. Unless it's some piece of junk lock that like you could stick a toothpick in and open the thing.
Yeah. Or use the old credit card swipe trick. We used to have to do that in our dorm rooms. If you'd get locked out, that trick, you slide it. Slide a card between. I'm sure you're an expert on that.
Yeah. Okay, we're done for the day. Some people would say, hooray, hooray, hooray. Armstrong and Getty up next. Armstrong and Getty are next. Have a good day, John.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?